year's worth of campaigning comes down to the final hours.
The choice is between Ohio values and Wall Street values.
I have never seen the kind of negative, smearing, lying stuff.
For Governor Ted Strickland and challenger John Kasich, it's too close to call. Both candidates appealing to their base, hoping independents break their way. Other statewide campaigns also close. The winners may help reshape their party's future. But the U.S. Senate race may be called early on election night. Rob Portman maintains a huge lead. Is a come-from-way-behind victory possible for Lee Fisher? With the state reapportionment board up for grabs, with Democrats fighting to maintain a majority in the state House, with Ohio's John Boehner the next potential U.S. Speaker, and with President Obama spending the last few hours before the election back in Ohio, the stakes for Ohioans, as the nation watches, could not be higher.
From ONN and WBNS 10 TV, serving Central Ohio and the state for more than 60 years, this is Capitol Square.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Capitol Square. I'm Jim Heath.
And I'm Jerry Revish. This is it, the last weekend before Election Day. The candidates are out in force, trying to snatch up every last vote they can get.
Indeed, Jerry. Now, coming up, we'll break down all the major Ohio races during this high-stakes midterm election. And for analysis, we've assembled the top political experts who have been carefully following these campaigns from the very beginning. Joining us from the Dayton Daily News, Bill Hershey, and from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Reggie Fields.
Also in studio, Karen Kasler from Ohio Public Television and Radio, and James Nash from the Columbus Dispatch. Now, we begin with the race for governor. In the final weeks of this campaign, polls indicated the gap shrinking between Democrat Ted Strickland and his Republican challenger, John Kasich.
Yeah, indeed. According to this latest Survey USA poll, Jerry, issued on Wednesday, Kasich now has a 5 percentage point lead over Strickland, which is within the 1-point margin of error, we should point out. Kasich leads with independents, but interestingly enough, Strickland leads among those who have voted early.
Geographically, poll results show Kasich leading in Cincinnati, Dayton, and Columbus. Strickland leads in Toledo, and the candidates are about even in Cleveland. Kasich and Strickland sharpened their tone during the final week of the campaign. Give a listen.
Here in Ohio, voters face a very clear choice. A choice between electing the folks who got us into this economic mess or supporting the folks who are working every day to get us out of this recession. The choice is between Ohio values and Wall Street values.
In my entire political life, I have never seen the kind of negative, smearing, lying stuff that these Democrats have done and brought on the people of this state. In my entire life, it doesn't matter who's running in this state. Barack Obama comes into this state, and all he talks about is they're going to take us backwards. Well, hey, you know what? Backwards into the 90s is a heck of a lot better than what he's given us since he's been president of the United States.
Strickland, still behind in the polls, has been hammering home Kasich's connection to Wall Street and his work at Lehman Brothers. Now, Kasich has turned more negative this final week, too, accusing Strickland of waging a fear campaign, while he has also avoided taking questions from the press. Jim?
Jerry, indeed. As a matter of fact, that's been a complaint this past week that Kasich has sort of gone into bunker mode the final few days. Perhaps, guys, that's due to the fact that he does not want to create any kind of great gaffe in the closing hours of this campaign. Could also, Bill, be a sign that maybe the Kasich internal polling is showing him ahead, where now they're on cruise control, hoping to ride this out.
I think Kasich does want to ride it out. That's been his kind of a rope-a-dope strategy. He doesn't want to create controversy about himself. He's ahead. He wants to stay ahead. He doesn't want Governor Strickland to have any way to pick up these 3 or 4 or 5 points that separate them right now.
Yeah, I also think that it's probably a little bit too close for comfort for the Kasich campaign as well, because all during the summer and early fall, I mean, it was pretty much a double-digit lead for Kasich, but over the last few weeks, we have seen this race get closer and closer and closer.
Is that why the negative tone this
Well,
week?
I would say so. I mean, and also the media blackout. I mean, he's not talking to the media any longer, as Bill says. You know, doesn't want to give any last-minute fodder for the Strickland campaign to maybe use against him, but I kind of read it as maybe they're a little nervous about this race just getting way too close after they've enjoyed such a double-digit lead just throughout, pretty much up to mid-September or so.
Right. And I don't think at this point you want to give any reasons not to vote for your candidate. So the more you talk off the cuff, off the record in the press gaggles, potentially the more reasons you could be giving somebody to not vote for you to vote for the other guy. It's those undecided voters or those voters who haven't voted yet. They may be decided, but they could still change their minds.
Is surprised by the tone on Monday? It was almost like Kasich turned on for the first time this year, sort of the negative switch. Is that just an effort to get out the base at this point?
I think it also reflects, this is John Kasich's first statewide race. He said something about this being the most negative race. I don't know where he's been. Governor Strickland was accused of being part of the Men-Boy Society 4 years ago when he ran for Congress once. Frank Cremines associated him with the Lucasville prison riots. Governor Strickland's been through this before. Kasich didn't really have too many close races when he ran for Congress. His run for the presidency lasted not very long. So maybe it surprised him that people do say nasty things about each other.
Karen, let me ask you, the governor told me yesterday that he won't need 50% of the vote to win, which I thought was very interesting. There are two other third-party candidates in this race. Is the Strickland strategy to the point now where they don't think they can hit 50, but they hope that the other candidates will take votes away from John Kasich?
Well, what do you need? You just need one more than the other guys, right? And so, I mean, the minority candidates, the third-party candidates are not going to be a factor. I mean, they're maybe 1%, maybe 2%. So I think you're seeing this nationwide, too, where you've got some Democrats in other states that are actively voting promoting Tea Party candidates to try to split that vote in the Republican camps and then get, you know, whatever's left over for themselves. So it's interesting to hear the governor say that. And one of the things that I've seen in the campaigns, being able to go to Strickland's campaign is also to Kasich's, is Kasich's campaign seems to almost be running a tone of we're the underdogs, we're behind. Go tell your friends, go get out in church and tell people you're voting for us. Strickland's campaign feels more confident, it seems like, with the tone that they're sending. Some of the press releases that they're sending out, it's almost like they don't think that they can lose.
Right.
And so it's an interesting difference in tone.
But Reggie, he's still 5 points behind. He's got to close that gap, the governor does, with undecided voters in the closing days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Karen is correct in that John Kasich is interesting in terms of the way they've been running this campaign as if they're no longer the front runners. But I think that's more or less to make sure that people, because the polls have shown that he has been so far ahead, doesn't want his voters to get, you know, so comfortable that they forget to actually come out and vote. And so I think that may be part of it as well.
And Kasich's running a lot of these events in smaller communities. And so it looks like you're behind when you're surrounded by a couple thousand people. You have a rally at Ohio State and there's 35,000 people. It looks like you're ahead. And so I think he's using that.
Indeed. All right. Jerry.
All right, let's turn our attention now to other statewide races. The two leading candidates for Ohio Attorney General are locked in a close battle. Our Survey USA poll shows Republican challenger Mike DeWine with a slight edge over Democratic incumbent Richard Cordray, 46 to 44%, and that's well within the margin of error. There's a lot at stake for both of these candidates, often rumored to be their party's potential gubernatorial nominee in 4 years. Jim?
Indeed, Jerry, and Senator DeWine obviously trying to make a comeback here after losing his last senatorial race to Sherrod Brown. I mean, this campaign is really, DeWine has been, I think, successful in creating the issue, which is the crime lab, right? That's been sort of the dominant issue. It seems like Cordray has been playing defense on that.
Well, he has been playing defense. Some of the studies show that Cordray has actually been doing a good job of improving things at the crime lab, but DeWine's ads are really tough. They accuse Cordray of letting people get off scot-free from heinous crimes. I don't know if that'll backfire or not, because Cordray does have a good reputation, certainly in Central Ohio, as a proven and capable office holder.
And Cordray's been very visible in the lawsuit aspect of the Attorney General's office. I think he's really been more on that side of it as opposed to the top cop side. It's the top lawyer side and advocating for the state in that area. That's where Mike DeWine, though, saw his opening, is, you know, there are all these lawsuits that have been filed. What about the other side, the police officer, the law enforcement side?
Yeah, and he's absolutely, Cordray, that is taking advantage of the fact that he is the incumbent, that he's in office right now. I mean, his his PR staff in-house is sending out 3, 4, 5, releases every day on this race. You mentioned that both of these are gubernatorial candidates, maybe in 2014 now. I think Cordray probably has a lot more to lose in this race because, I mean, obviously it's clear that that's what he is angling for in 2014, where maybe DeWine, maybe his time is sort of run out in terms of considering a run for governor.
It is interesting, Bill, that DeWine chose that political comeback by running for Attorney General after serving in the U.S. Senate.
Well, but I guess it is if you don't know a lot about Mike DeWine's history. He often says the best job he ever had was Greene County prosecutor, and there's that very effective ad with his daughter, who's now an assistant county prosecutor. That's how Mike DeWine started his political career, and he likes that. So he's kind of come full circle.
Karen, let's talk about Secretary of State very quickly. Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy from Franklin County versus Senator John Husted, the former House Speaker. This race seems to be coming down to the wire, although Husted could ride this Republican wave that we hear so much about.
Well, and I think when you talk about candidates for governor in 2014, I think you have to put John Husted in that list. He certainly has a lot of money. He's raised a ton of money in this race. And like you said, he's almost on cruise control. He's been in this race a lot longer than Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy has, and it shows in the fundraising.
What do you think, Bill?
Well, I think that Senator Husted wants to be Secretary of State this time, but I think he wants to be governor down the road. And so he needs to win this one. If he loses this, and O'Shaughnessy has a great name in Central Ohio, probably that O'Shaughnessy name will help up in Cleveland, which is a Democratic stronghold and might get her some votes out there.
Yeah, and this has been one of those close races as well. It's really hard to predict which way is up in this race as well. I mean, Husted, he is on his third opponent now. The Democrats, O'Shaughnessy is the third opponent that he has had to face in this very race. But it's really hard to predict, who's up.
I think we all agree with that. All right, Jerry.
Even more statewide offices are up for grabs this election. Coming up on Capitol Square, what's at stake in the race for treasurer and auditor? Also ahead, how the outcome of several congressional races in Ohio could lead to a shift in power on Capitol Hill and make an Ohio congressman Speaker of the House. And be sure to check out all of our exclusive on-the-record interviews with the statewide and congressional candidates on our websites, 10tv.com and onntv.com.